Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India Global. We will get you the top stories from India and the region. I'm Shubhendu Ghosh, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague Ollie Barrett in London. Good to have you with us, Ollie.
Good to be with you, Shubhendu. It's 12:30 p.m. here in London, 1:30 across Central Europe. Coming up in the next 30 minutes, a major milestone for India's private space sector. Live to South Africa for election results latest, and the UK's Parliament is dissolved. First, the headlines.
Indian space startup Agnikul Cosmos successfully conducts test flight of world's first 3D printed rocket engine. Prime Minister Modi hails the feat. Israel continues raids into southern Gaza's Rafah. US Secretary of State Blinken urges Israel to craft post-war Gaza plan, warns of chaos. In a dramatic shift in South Africa's political landscape, African National Congress appears on course to lose the parliamentary majority it had held for 30 years. 14 Hong Kong pro-democracy activists found guilty in a landmark subversion trial. US and allies criticized the trial as politically motivated. An Indian startup has successfully conducted maiden test flight of a 3D printed semi-cryogenic rocket engine. The private company was incubated by Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, one of India's premier institutions of higher learning. India's space agency, ISRO, posted a message on X, and I quote, "Congratulations, Agnikul Cosmos, for the successful launch of the Agniban Suborbital Technology Demonstrator 1 mission from their launch pad. A major milestone as the first ever controlled flight of a semi-cryogenic liquid engine realized through additive maneuvering," unquote. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi also congratulated the Agnikul team, calling it a remarkable feat which will make the entire nation proud. Taking to X, Prime Minister says, "A remarkable feat which will make the entire nation proud." The successful launch of Agniban rocket, powered by world's first single-piece 3D printed semi-cryogenic engine, is a momentous occasion for India's space sector and a testament to remarkable ingenuity of our Yuva Shakti. My best wishes to Agnikul Cosmos team for their future endeavors. India has made a quantum jump in the field of space in the last 9 years. Efforts have been made to further diversify applications of space with the launch of Indian National Space Promotion and Authorization Centre. That's a single-window independent nodal agency that functions as an autonomous agency of the country's Department of Space. My colleague Taposh Bhattacharya gets us more.
India's space sector has been making significant strides, positioning itself as a formidable player in the global space economy. In 2020, India's central government established InSpace, marking a pivotal moment by allowing commercial companies to enter the space sector. This move catalyzed unprecedented growth, with over 150 space tech startups raising more than $285 million in capital between 2014 and 2023.
Indian space sector में पिछले कुछ सालों से बहुत अच्छा एक ग्रोथ देखने को आया है। अभी हमारी गवर्नमेंट ने भी 2023 में नई स्पेस पॉलिसी लेकर के आए हैं, जिससे जो प्राइवेट स्पेस रिलेटेड कंपनीज हैं उनको बेटर अपॉर्चुनिटीज मिल रही हैं, अलग अलग सेक्टर्स में काम करने का अवसर मिल रहा है। कई सारे जो फॉरेन इन्वेस्टमेंट हैं जो स्पेस सेक्टर में आ रहे हैं, जैसे अभी गूगल ने इन्वेस्टमेंट किया है अराउंड $36 मिलियन का, ये पिक्सल कंपनी में सैटेलाइट इमेज स्टार्टअप है।
The Indian space sector was valued at $9.6 billion in 2020, contributing to 2 to 3% of the global space economy. By 2025, this sector is expected to grow to $13 billion. Looking further ahead, India aims to capture a substantial 10% share of the global space economy by 2030. In 2024, India declared plans to relax foreign direct investment regulations, permitting 100% foreign investment in component manufacturing.
The historic decision paves the way for unprecedented growth and innovation and will ultimately foster a new era of space exploration and commercialization in India. As a full-stack space engineering company, Dhruva Space is poised to leverage these opportunities to make significant contributions to the world space community and achieve remarkable milestones through collaboration, innovation, and capacity building.
The Indian startup ecosystem in the space sector is thriving. From just one startup in 2012, the industry has grown to 189 startups by 2023. These startups received a total funding of $124.7 million in 2023, a notable increase from $67.2 million in 2021. India has signed space cooperation agreement with 61 countries and 5 multilateral bodies, reflecting its commitment to international collaboration. With these robust policies and investment, India is not just participating, but is set to lead the charge in the global space sector. As India continues to push the boundaries of innovation and collaboration, the sky is no longer the limit. The Indian space sector is poised to make a massive gain in the years to come. With camera person Shubham, this is Tapash Bhattacharya for DD India from Delhi.
On to some other stories now. Israel's military on Wednesday said its forces took control of a 14-kilometer-long Philadelphia corridor along the border between Gaza and Egypt. In a televised briefing, the chief military spokesperson says Israeli forces had gained operational control over the buffer zone. This gives the Israeli forces effective authority over Palestinian territory's entire land border. Cyprus on Thursday said humanitarian aid for Gaza continues to depart from the region by sea while a key landing pier is in repair. The Cyprus government official said the aid would be kept in a floating storage off Gaza until the US-built military pier is fixed. Earlier in the week, US military said the floating pier built to receive aid for Gaza by sea was being temporarily removed after a part of the structure had broken off. Meanwhile, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken has urged Israel to come up with a post-war plan for Gaza. He warned that the absence of it could trigger lawlessness, chaos and a comeback by Hamas in the enclave.
And I think this underscores the imperative of having a plan for the day after. Because in the absence of a plan for the day after, there won't be a day after. And this is where we need to go, and we need to get as quickly as possible. A plan for the day after that does not leave Israel responsible for Gaza, which it says it does not want to be. But if it is, it will simply have an enduring insurgency on its hands for as far as one can see into the future, or not.
And DD India's Sarah Coates joins us live from Tel Aviv. Sarah, what is the latest on Israeli operation in Rafah?
Hello there, Shibendu. Well, the Israeli military is certainly deepening its incursion down into that southern area of Rafah, as you mentioned, taking control of the Philadelphia corridor, that buffer zone, 14 kilometres long, that separates Egypt and Gaza. This is certainly a very strategic area. It is supposed to be demilitarised. And what this is really doing is signalling a new phase of the war and also putting a lot of pressure on this relationship, a lot of strain on this relationship between Israel and Egypt, also really putting in jeopardy this decades-long Camp David peace treaty between the two countries. Now, the Egyptians are extremely concerned. They've been very worried for some time now that this push into Rafah could forcibly displace thousands of Palestinians over that border into Egypt, which would have real security concerns for Cairo. Now, we've heard from the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. He has come out to urge the international community to put pressure on Israel and ensure that this doesn't happen, that thousands of Palestinians are not actually forced over that border. So certainly very concerning to the Egyptians. But The Israelis do claim that this needs to happen, that they need to take control over this area, claiming that since they have, that they've found many primed rocket launchers and also tunnels that are used for weapons smuggling. So certainly this is, as I said, a new stage in the war as fighting really intensifies right across the Strip, Shibendu.
And Sarah, amidst these developments, fighting was also reported from the West Bank. What more can you tell us on that? Sarah, fighting we heard was also reported
having a little
from
trouble
West Bank.
hearing you there, Shibendu, but I'll just give you the latest on the situation in the West Bank.
Yes.
According to Palestinian sources on the ground, some 20 people have been arrested over the past few hours. And since the beginning of the war, this brings the number up to almost 9,000 Palestinians arrested. That is according to the Palestinian Prisoners Society. This is certainly very concerning to the United States. It has been warning Israel over the past few months that it really needs to contain the situation in the West Bank, fearing that it could become the next front. But there have been almost daily raids on this area, and we saw that once again overnight. The Israeli military going into many areas, many villages, and also into Ramallah, letting off things like tear gas cannons in this area. Also, there was a large fire at a very well-known fruit market, vegetable market, in the centre of that city, which people on the ground say has now been completely destroyed. Now, separately, there was another incident late yesterday in the West Bank. It happened just outside Nablus, outside a settlement, an Israeli illegal settlement. There was a car ramming, wounding 2 soldiers on the ground, with the Israeli military earlier this morning announcing that those 2 people have since died. So certainly a lot of tension there in the West Bank as well.
Sarah, thank you for those updates. Meanwhile, the spokesperson of India's External Affairs Ministry today held weekly media briefing in New Delhi, taking questions over recent airstrikes on Rafah camps. The spokesperson said Israel has accepted responsibility for it and has ordered an investigation. He added that India has called for respect for humanitarian law.
That particular issue, we want to say that the heartbreaking loss of civilian lives in the displacement camp in Rafah is a matter of deep concern for us. We have consistently called for protection of civilian population and respect for international humanitarian law in the ongoing conflict. We also note that the Israeli side has already accepted responsibility for it as a tragic incident and announced an investigation into the incident.
And from one conflict to another, amidst Russia-Ukraine conflict, Kremlin blames NATO for the senseless war. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London, gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, the deadlock continues in the Russia-Ukraine conflict.
Thanks, Shibendu. Well, yes, the Kremlin is now saying that the United States, NATO and a few European countries are encouraging Ukraine to continue what it calls its senseless war with Russia. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov accusing Western countries of escalating tensions in recent weeks by allowing Ukraine to use weapons that they've been supplying to Kiev for its conflict against Russia. Ukraine's top commander, meanwhile, says Russia is building up forces near the northern part of the Kharkiv region. Ukraine says Russia is continuing to send additional regiments and brigades to bulk up its troops on 2 main lines of attack in that region. Kiev's military says its forces repelled 1 Russian attack on the Kharkiv front on Thursday. Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, meanwhile, is calling on the global south not to participate in a Ukraine peace conference to be hosted by Switzerland in June. DD India's Dasha Chernyshova reports from Moscow.
The Kremlin reminded on Wednesday that if Russia is struck with Western weapons, that will escalate the conflict. Earlier, Russian President Vladimir Putin warned of serious consequences and said Moscow was already provoked to create a buffer zone in the Kharkiv direction, as Russia's Belgorod region has been constantly shelled. In the meantime, Russian Ministry of Defense said it made more advances on the Kharkiv direction and hit a warehouse of unmanned boats, aviation equipment, a few warehouses in Ukraine, as well as an assembly shop for drones. And its naval forces destroyed 2 Ukrainian sea drones in the northwest part of the Black Sea as they were heading towards Crimea. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the conflict in Ukraine is getting a global projection and urged the countries not to succumb to the US pressure and also not to participate in the peace conference on Ukraine that is due to be held in Switzerland next month. He said this conference's goal was not to consider the settlement of the conflict in Ukraine, but rather to work out an unacceptable ultimatum to Russia. In the meantime, Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov said Wednesday that Belarus's involvement in Russia's tactical nuclear weapons drills does not violate the provisions of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. Dasha Cherneshova in Moscow, reporting for DD India.
Next to South Africa, where the ruling African National Congress appears on course to lose the parliamentary majority it's held for 30 years. After the country's election commission released results from just over 16% of polling stations, the ANC's share of the vote stood at only 42.5%. On Thursday, the election is the focus of most local newspapers, with lots of coverage on the turnout of voters. Meanwhile, South Africa's rand has slipped and the country's stocks and bonds have been under pressure after those projections showing the governing ANC set to potentially lose its parliamentary majority. Well, Isaac Lucando joins us live now from Johannesburg. Isaac, what can we read into those results so far?
Well, I'm here at the Gallagher Convention Center. It's where there is a results operations center run by the IEC, or the Electoral Commission of South Africa. And behind me is the leaderboard, which clearly shows that the ANC, while having a lead against other contenders in this election, 70 to be exact, it still faces a problem predicted by opinion polls before we went to voting. There are 2 million votes that have been counted so far, and of that result, the ANC has less than 50% of that vote. And all other contenders, especially the top 4, seem to have gotten the same percentages that opinion polls predicted. And as you say, they are underway to lose their majority in parliament, and this could mean that they would be forced to enter into a coalition with 1 or 2 or even 3 parties, depending on just how much of a defeat that will be for them. But this remains to be seen, since we're out only at 20% of the total vote. So the vote counting still continues, and it is being tallied behind me here. We expect that later on at 4 p.m. local time, we should be getting a briefing from the Electoral Commission here, who will give us a picture of some of the challenges that perhaps are being encountered during the vote counting process, how it is proceeding, and when can we expect to get a full picture of the results of this particular election.
DD India's Isaac Lucando right there at the counting centre. We will be back with you for updates through the day. Thank you. Here in the UK, Parliament has been dissolved as the 5-week campaign period begins leading up to the parliamentary election on July the 4th. As the clock struck 1 minute past midnight local time, all 650 seats of the members of Parliament became vacant, marking the official commencement of the electoral process. Polling suggests the Labour Party could return to power after 14 years of consecutive rule. And next we will go to Papua New Guinea to get the latest from that country on the disaster relief efforts that have been going on in PNG since the country ruled out finding survivors under the rubble of the massive landslide that it experienced. Heavy equipment and aid have been slow to arrive because of the treacherous terrain, a damaged bridge on the main road, as well as tribal unrest in that area. Authorities say more than 2,000 people may have been buried alive in the landslide. Desperate scenes in Papua New Guinea. Shibendu, back to you.
Desperate indeed. Thank you very much, Ollie, for those updates. Let's now get you the latest on the world's largest democratic elections in India. India is all set to vote for the 7th and last phase of its parliamentary elections. 57 constituencies across 8 states and union territories will vote on June 1st. The fate of 904 candidates will be decided in this phase of the elections. 13 seats each will go to the polls in Uttar Pradesh and Punjab, 9 in West Bengal, 8 in Bihar, 6 in Odisha, 4 in Himachal Pradesh, 3 in Jharkhand, and a seat in the union territory of Chandigarh. Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj is the first woman diplomat from India to assume the position of permanent representative at the United Nations. In an exclusive interaction with DD India, she recounts the most memorable moments of her career.
Well, December 2022 marked an incredibly memorable presidency for India. I recall that we organized 2 signature events, one on the reform and expansion of the United Nations Security Council, and the other on countering terrorism with a united front. And I'm pleased to share that in the first event, we successfully highlighted the urgent need to reform and expand an outdated structure by bringing more democracy and diversity of voices to the table. And regarding the second event, we achieved a significant milestone by concluding a presidential statement with the unanimous consensus of all 15 council members.
And you can watch this exclusive conversation I had with Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj today on DD India News Hour at 6 p.m. IST or 12:30 GMT. Let's now take a look at other stories making news around the world. A Chilean woman, Camila Gomez, met with President Gabriel Boric after achieving her goal to raise funds for her son's treatment and get government support for the rare illnesses. Her son is suffering with touch and muscular dystrophy, which causes all the muscles in the body to weaken gradually. A UAE-based company uses food waste from hotels and turns it into compost to be used by local farmers. Started in 2021, Reloop gets contribution from more than 100 hotels and restaurants. 23rd edition of traditional equestrian art competition, Tiborida, kicked off in Morocco's Rabat. 18 adult teams and 6 youth teams are participating this year. It was inscribed in 2021 on UNESCO's representative list of intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Famous for its rich traditions and deep-rooted cultural heritage, Algeria's Souz Azman market is a wonderful blend of ancient markets and modern-day commerce, culture and social activities. Built in 1248 during the Middle Ages by Zenat Sultans, the market is set against the majestic backdrop of Moorish, Arab, Andalusian architecture. The vibrant seasonal market emerges as a gateway to Algeria's cherished traditions. Historic place. But that's all in this edition of DD India Live and DD India Global. Let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can, those on the go, can find the latest and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on